Welcome back to the YTG Podcast.
Welcome.
You are new here, my name is Nico. I'm an automotive photographer and now amateur racing driver.
I'm Sean, and I am the owner of this lovely shed in Keysborough, YTG Young Timers Garage.
Here
Welcome.
on the weekly-ish YTG Podcast, we're going to give you the sort of inside scoop inside the automotive industry in Australia, as well as some fantastic stories, motorsport, anything car related. So, and a bit of electric car hate. So join us on another episode, and we hope you enjoy. Welcome back to episode 8, season 2 of the YTG Podcast.
Yes.
It's been 5 minutes. We're feeling refreshed, and we've been joined by a guest, as you can see, Mr. James Wong. Welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Thank you for having me, guys.
No,
It is a pleasure to have you. So James is a automotive journalist, as we sort of mentioned right at the end of the last week. So we're going to ask him a few questions about what it's like to live the dream.
A very different insight on how they see the industry, and obviously industry experts on how they give their reviews and how it better be quite a good in-depth from the backs of how you do things.
Yeah. So James is also an ambassador for Drive Against Depression.
Yes.
Which we all now work with in some respects.
Yeah, so we've sort of jumped on board too. We're sort of like really going to try and support that and do as much as we can with it, which is fantastic. We're talking about that today with someone else. They were talking about the drive coming up. There's a drive
on the 11th,
coming up, isn't it? Yeah. So no, it's awesome to be involved. Looking forward to doing more stuff with you guys too.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it'd be good. So welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, do you want to introduce yourself? Tell us a bit about yourself and what you do for work.
Yeah, I don't know where to start. It's almost like
Mate, just start from the start
Anonymous
and go,
or
yeah.
I'm James and I'm a car journalist. But yeah, I've been doing this for a little while now. I started off almost by accident, no, maybe not by accident, but I did an internship with car sales a really long time ago when I was still at uni. So that's 8 or 9 years ago now. And then I managed to get a gig at Car Advice, which may it rest in peace. It's now no longer with us anymore.
So that's finished, has it?
So Car Advice and Drive merged while I was still there.
Okay, yeah.
And Drive became the dominant brand after that.
Yes.
So that still is alive and well. I still have
Yes.
a lot of friends there. So
Yes.
we love, shout out to those guys for
Yeah.
for those great years that I was there. And then I had a quick stop into communication. So I worked at Ford Australia's communications agency for about 6 months just before COVID. And then COVID happened and the world almost... I got a little bit of experience working inside a manufacturer, which is really
cool.
interesting and valuable for me as
Is
a
that like
journalist.
Broadmeadows?
No, so the marketing or the sales office is in Richmond, where the Victoria Gardens shopping centre is.
Yes,
Yeah, so I did hike out to Broadmeadows a couple of times, but a lot of the marketing and comms and product planners, they're all in that Melbourne, Richmond office. So did that for about 6 months, and then COVID happened. So then I was freelancing for the CarExpert guys that I used to work with at Car Advice and Drive when they first started the website. So I think we just celebrated like 4 years of the website just the other day. So that's pretty much been my life since then.
Got a bit of traction, hasn't this CarExpert?
Yeah, we've been really fortunate that a lot of people have followed us from the early days. So for those who don't know, Al Bors, Paul and Tony started Car Advice a really long time ago. It was like, I was still in school. That's how long ago it was. And so when they left Car Advice or Drive at the time, they decided to start up a new gig and a few of us followed them over there.
Yeah, cool.
And we've just been really fortunate to have some really great success. And, we've been trying to do things a little bit differently and, just sort of refining an old formula that worked for us when we were in our previous jobs and sort of really expanding on that. So now we're sort of working in not just the editorial side and content, but also working on new car marketplace and really helping people from the moment that you start thinking about what your next purchase is and then sort of holding your hand and taking you through that process with, advice, reviews and all that kind of thing. And also we're still very active in engaging with our audience, which is not something that you come across very often still. We're always in the comments, we're always in, whether it's YouTube or our website, I'm in there all the time talking to people. I know Paul and some of the other team members are doing that as well. So that's a really important part because that's how people relate to you, So,
And the formula is only obviously new cars and new cars segment, really?
Yeah, for us it's new cars. So a few of the other publications sort of do the used car stuff as well, but for us we're focusing on new cars.
Yep.
Yeah, which there is enough of coming out now. Oh my God.
Yeah, we've been kept very busy, especially post-COVID when you had, that sort of flow-on effect of delays and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then since probably the beginning of last year, it's just been relentless because a lot of brands had things delayed from the factory.
Sure.
And then they just slowly started all rolling in. And then it was just, 1 week after another. We have a team of, on editorial alone, we have 6 to 8 people at any given point. And, there were some weeks where most of us were out on events or, doing something new. Yeah. It's just crazy how, there was a time during COVID where we thought, the way that we do our job is dead. We're not going to be going on these events anymore. We're not going to be driving things the same way because at the time, a lot of manufacturers were just focusing on getting their cars to customers. They didn't need us to do anything. But then since then, it's almost done a 180 and now we're doing more of what we used to do beforehand and with higher frequency as well. So I know it's a little bit different to what you guys do here, but this doesn't make me any less excited to see what you've got behind you.
But that's just, I guess, I found that, I suppose, the COVID period, especially in our industry, is I think everyone was just salivating to get out there and start experiencing. And one thing I have noticed, that there's always some new driver experience or some dealerships put on this, go for a drive down the peninsula or go and have some fancy food and the usual things. That they all seem to be doing similar, but it's massive engagement with their clients. I've really noticed after COVID much more so than I'd noticed before. There's always something. I mean, blessed we get invited to a few events to go to because obviously they're on my client base or I have clients there or whatever the case may be, but it's pretty full on. So they would be contacting, I guess, the PR or the marketing side of things would be contacting your company in terms of with product release and getting you guys involved. I suppose you just get invited to go with the other journalists and I suppose...
so walk us through it. How does it work? What's a day in a life?
Yeah, for a lot of people think that we're just out driving and doing fun things all day, which there is a lot of that.
Sure.
But for most of us, we're still behind the desk like a lot of other people. We're writing, we're editing, we're, checking the feeds to see what's going on. Our industry is very global, so you've got different time zones to work with. When you've got so many different manufacturers as well, there's something happening all the time. But in terms of like how the events work, a lot of it is, the companies will start planning, they'll send out invites. We normally nominate one person to go. And then, you sort of spend the event with all the other publications that are being represented by different journalists. Sometimes there are multiple waves if they don't have enough cars for everybody or they need to, make the event smaller. But then, and then you sort of get given an embargo to sort of, or a deadline to work towards for your review and any other content that you produce.
Do they have to sign off before you go to publication or no, not really?
Because that's the whole point of being an editorial and being an independent as well. Because otherwise we're almost doing...
Yeah, I know. Just a PR job for them.
Exactly right. Yeah. So that's the PR and the marketing side of it. We're independent. We're not paid by manufacturers to do good reviews or anything like that. Yeah, so
the car's shit, you will say it.
Yeah, and I've been known to have a harsh critique every now and then, and sometimes it might ruffle some feathers, but it's our job.
I was going to say, you have to be the buyer's advocate. I mean, you need to, as much as it really tell them what it's like to be, hey, this is real life experience. I'm not filtered, sugarcoating, which is good.
Yeah, absolutely.
And are you finding that, my favourite car reviewer, and it's always been Chris Harris. Like, you hear the stories and so on where, I remember he went somewhere in the Rolls, I think it was the Cullinan or something like that, and he goes, it was shit. And they're just, they're all panicking, like, everyone's, no, it's shit. You know what I mean? And I just love it. I'm like, that raw philosophy is like pretty much how we are here, but I guess that's the thing. Everyone's worried about, I don't want to offend the manufacturer because we won't get invited again.
Yeah.
Well, hang on, no, you've got to tell the truth. Otherwise, no one's going to listen to your car expert because, they're just biased. They're just, you know what I mean? They don't. So whereas you guys do ruffle it up.
Yeah, we have to be honest. And I think it's these days with new cars, and some people may not believe this, but it's really hard to find a new car these days that's actually that bad that you have to pan it like that.
Yeah.
And Chris Harris or a Jeremy Clarkson might have a bit more liberty to be a little bit controversial or that kind of thing. But when you think about, I always have to put myself in the mind of the target buyer. A lot of the cars that we drive, they're not enthusiasts like us. They could be your mum or your
it's just transport possibly.
Exactly right. Yeah. But what I like in in a car, what you like in a car, you like something a bit sporty, whereas you got parents that really just don't care. They want to go to school safely or do shopping or help out their grandparents and things like that. So, you know, sometimes the stuff that looks a bit more, or the things that you think about that are really important to you may not be important to the next person. Yeah. So it's not quite as clear cut always as being like, oh, this is crap or this is really good and things like that. There's a lot of grey area in between. And a lot of my approach personally is to be like, you know, we can have a benchmark in any given new car segment.
Sure.
But that still doesn't mean that's the perfect car for the person that's reading it. And you know, cars are such an emotional purchase. They're such a tailored purchase to what works for you. And that's why it's so wonderful that we have such diversity and so many different choices on the market, especially in a country like Australia where population-wise, we're not very big, but we have one of the most hotly contested industries out there.
If anything, we're oversaturated, really.
Absolutely,
And then people go, we've got no resale because we've got too much choice. It has become cheap to sell. There's no reason. And the unnecessary taxes that we have here.
100%.
And I mean, you guys must hear this all the time. I mean, I've been biggest advocate about this LCT, and it is just absolute bullshit, really. I mean, and now all the people with their green SUVs, whatever, now they're getting jammed too because they're increasing the taxes on those things as well now. So there's no longer mates rates sort of stuff. You're getting done too now. So you're like, okay, how much of a green saving it was. Now, are you finding that, I suppose, again, I was saying this the other day, especially from your point of view, reviewing the market and looking at the trends. I mean, if you told me 10 years ago when I was at Ferrari, running Ferrari, you know that in 10 years' time or whatever in the future, number 1 and 2 selling cars will be a dual cab ute. And it's amazing. Now you look at the market, the F-150, F-250, all these things. Now they're all, even Toyota now are doing a sports version of their Hilux, the GR, whatever it is, because, hang on, you got the Wildtrak, you got the Raptor, you got, you know, they're going, hey, we need to get into this sector now. It's quite amazing how it's gone that way. I mean, would you ever have seen our market going that way? It's quite amazing how strong it is.
Yeah, you know, even though I've been in the industry for just under a decade, which is still a long time, but not as long as some of the people that I've come across in the industry have been around. You know, I remember when I was a kid, you know, Falcons and Commodores dominated everything, right? And, you know, the Ute versions of those were pretty popular, but everything was about that. And then, you know, the Territory came along and then it sort of went back to smaller cars again. You had Corolla and Mazda 3 dominating the charts. And then, you know, some point mid last decade, that's when the Hilux just took over, and Hilux and Ranger have been duking it out for ages. And it's unbelievable. Like last year, we had the most new cars sold ever in 1 year. And the top 3 vehicles were 3 Utes.
Is it the Colorado?
The D-Max.
The D-Max, sorry.
So
it
you got the Ranger, Hilux, D-Max, 1, 2, 3.
Isn't that amazing?
Which is just insane. And I just wonder how many tradies do we have in
And then they're complaining. Right. But they're complaining the other day on the news. They were talking about the car parking issues.
Yeah.
Because they're also, like, seriously, I mean, I'm
because
now,
how big the cars are.
Mate, I mean, I went to the shops the other day, and I'm in that dual cab ute now. I had to give up 3 parking spots because I was hanging out. And I'm going, what happens if I come back and someone's hooked up on his rear guard because he's hit the quarter, he's trying to... And I went, oh, shit, so I went and parked on the grass. You know what I mean? Because I could, and the other cars couldn't, so I just went and parked up the nation. But you sit there going, I couldn't get a Raptor because it won't fit in my garage.
Yeah.
And I built a brand new bloody house, and I'm going to go buy a car, can't fit the garage. It's stupid. And you sit there going, it's just getting bigger and bigger. It's amazing how our market's gone.
The GWM's not even that big. A Ram 2500 or something.
Mate, the boys next door got the Ram, and I was like,
No, it will not fit in a car park.
A Raptor won't fit. Wildtrak, but...
Yeah, let alone a bloody Dodge Ram.
It's just unreal. It's unbelievable. And the money.
Oh.
So much money.
It's crazy.
Yeah, like we lament the loss of affordable motoring because you see so many manufacturers pulling away from, like, you know, your small and entry level segments, and we're all complaining. But at the same time, everyone's buying these, you know, $60,000 to $70,000 cars.
Yeah.
But we're also complaining about cost of living. I don't understand. Like, I work in the industry and I still don't understand.
Mate, same. We had this conversation. We're going, like this we were talking before, going, fuck, that thing should have fucking sold. Okay, granted, my market's different, but there's still people in my market, you know what I mean? It's and you look at that and you're going, fuck, that should have sold. That was great value. But hang on, that sold. What's going on here? Like, again, you look at the certain things and you're like, wow, it is amazing the way our markets move. But then you've got this big EV push, which I'm sure you're seeing as well. I mean, the manufacturers push. But you have to admit, from what I've read and what I'm seeing, and it's actually great that you're here because you can sort of say firsthand, are you noticing there's a bit of a decline or a bit of a pushback on this EV save all the trees rubbish, or you're still finding that it's still strong, or is this a bit of filtered glass figures from the manufacturers to keep in tune with the push to be carbon, whatever the fuck, for 2030 or some rubbish like that? I mean, you see it firsthand. I mean, is it it's still strong and it's moving forward?
I think it depends on where you're looking at. We've started to see in the last 6 months that other major markets in the world that started much earlier than us, they're starting to see a decline.
Yeah,
so you're seeing
definitely.
Europe and North America. I think the initial rush has sort of come through, and a lot of people have bought them or cashed in on the incentives and things like that.
Yes.
And, you still see there's a lot of brands still playing catch up to offer vehicles with electric powertrains, but they're potentially moving into different segments so that, they're aiming for a new buyer, a new price bracket and things like that. For Australia, I think we saw a record last year where I think the EV market share was at about 6 to 7%, which is pretty big given it was at like under 1% a year or two ago.
Yeah, it's definitely moved.
Yeah, it's definitely moved. And I think, Australia is a country of early adopters and people who like to show off in various ways, whether it's buying something that's in your beautiful showroom here or being able to say, I've bought an electric car, whether it's a Tesla or something else that they can say, oh, this is what I love about it, because it's a lifestyle change. It's a very big thing. And a lot of people that we deal with from a new car perspective don't understand the things that go into owning a plug-in vehicle of any kind, whether it's a plug-in hybrid or an EV, because there are so many things that you have to factor in around charging and all that other stuff. Yeah. And it is really interesting. I think what we've seen in the last year is Tesla dominates, and really for us as vehicle assessors, the Teslas are probably objectively the best or the benchmarks because they mix the value and the efficiency and the drive experience really well. The technology is really polarizing. I'm personally not a huge fan of them, and there's still the stigmas around build quality and all that kind of thing.
That still is a thing, is it?
Yeah, it's better now because the ones that we get are sourced from China. So that helps.
Are they actually building them there, are they?
Yeah, so we get I think they're built in Shanghai or something like that. They've got a massive factory over there. And so our ones are all sourced from there. I don't know what they have a factory in Germany as well that supplies Europe, which I don't know how good the build quality is there, but I would imagine it might be another step up.
Germany?
Yeah, so they've got Germany, they've got China, they've got US.
That would cost a lot more to build though, wouldn't they? You would think.
Yeah, I don't know. I think maybe because they don't have to freight them too far. Elon just does things and people follow, it seems. So, it's still the benchmark. They are the market leader. We're starting to see the Chinese brands really come and fill in the more budget-oriented part of that now. But they haven't quite taken off as perhaps as much as we would have thought. Like in terms of private sales last year, because, the Utes are still bought by fleets and business buyers and things like that. But the Tesla Model Y was actually the top private buyer vehicle.
What's the Y? Is that the small one?
That's the SUV one. So there's the model.
That's the one with the doors that open up like that.
That's the X. They don't sell that here anymore.
Oh, they don't do that.
Yeah, so the X and the Model S and Model X, which were the OG Teslas, they don't make them in right-hand drive anymore. So we don't get new ones. Yeah, so there's heaps of them around because people bought them for a period of time.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, but you can't actually get them in right-hand drive anymore. So we miss out.
So the new Tesla
Model 3 and Model Y.
Yeah.
So how many Teslas are there? How many models are there? Two.
There's just the two for now.
Which is the small one, the 3?
Yeah, which is like the Camry size sedan.
Yeah.
And then the Model Y is...
But they all look the same though. They're little hatchy things, aren't they?
They all have that similar shape. Yeah.
And everyone buys them in white. So they all look pretty similar.
Kills me.
Mate.
Oh my God.
Just fridges.
Yeah.
I can't believe I've spoken. This is the most I've spoken about electric cars in the last... whatever, because they're banned from here. So
yeah, I know. I've seen some of your comments in the past, so I was worried to bring it up.
It's intriguing just to listen to the psychology and how these people see these things. I mean, you know what I mean? Yes, I am a dinosaur. Yes, I've been called a dinosaur. And yes, I roar like a dinosaur with my V8. But I just am curious because, brother, you have a unique insight from me on the front line to you from the back end, seeing how the consumer behaviours. Now, granted, I've got very tinted glasses when it comes to EV, but I'm intelligent enough to listen to how you see it from that side of thing. There'll never be a day when an electric car will be in here. I mean, that guy turned up today, look at the Murcielago, and he fucking turned up in an electric car. And he was in the photo, he was in a black Tesla. Is that the Y? No.
It could be.
3 or a Y or whatever.
Or it could be an S or an X. You never know.
No, it was a hire car. So it must be the Y.
Okay.
Because it had Y on the number plate.
Okay,
Did it have a
yeah.
thing?
Okay,
And I
yeah.
looked at it, I'm just laughing, because next to it was the black Dodge Charger.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's contrast.
No, that was grouse. So I went, fuck, JP, get a photo. So I'm in the black Dodge Charger, Jigs of Hazard, next to this fucking Tesla, and this really, really, just looking at that, and I'm rough as fuck, and this, good-looking bloke sitting in the car, and I'm like, take a photo of this way, and he's driving out, and I'm driving this way, and he's driving out to the gate, and I'm going, they hired a car to come and look at this Murcielago and a Tesla, manual Murcielago.
Yeah.
And I'm like...
Contrast.
Yeah, that's a big extreme. But And I just said to him, I go, what's the microwave like, man? And like, yeah, it's different. And I've gone, they have other cars at the hire place. and his mate was with, he's like, oh, it was just easy, and you've got one, and I just started walking away. I just said, sorry, mate, you lost me when you said you got one.
Oh, my God.
But I can't, I was doing it fun. But he's a petrol head, and his mate was into this thing.
Yeah,
but
right.
Just listening to the talk, he was actually a bit embarrassed. But maybe that's because we're such bogan and petrol heads here.
Yeah.
And then when there's other mates, we're like, yeah, the grouse. The Tesla's like, yeah. But I mean, so it's funny how some people, that's like, how do we say it? We said this the other day. It's like I got my hand up. What was that fucking show back in the day? Friends. Or Melrose Place, right? Melrose Place was this back in the 90s, whatever it was, Melrose. It's a bit older than you blokes. But it was like one of those things that people would be embarrassed to say they watched it. Now, I can fucking say I never watched it. You can ask any of my girlfriends at the time. I never watched it. But...
Can I have one of their phone numbers, please?
Yeah,
that would be a fun conversation.
We don't want to talk to them, no. Anyways, but what I'm saying is, it was like, what? You watch it? No, man, no, I don't watch this sort of thing. It's like that. It's like...
Yeah, right.
So what, you drive... Oh, no, look, I've got to drive for work. It's like, come on, man. Do you know what I mean? It's funny how you're seeing different philosophies. Then you got other people like, of course, why? I'm not going to kill the environment. I want to drive my very sensible car.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, mate. So it's amazing the differences. It was just funny today. Just these two young guys, and one was like, oh, nah, man, I'm like, yeah, mate. You know what I mean? It was funny. So that's what, again, you see these things. It's not a trend, or it's just a certain demographic market that you consistently, that young family, is it? Or it's just a young, more of a IT savvy type of person, or is it certain market trends, or it's just a bit of everything?
I think it's a bit of everything. I think we're in a period now, and I don't know whether you guys see this as well, is that, cars are becoming more and more accessories. And then I think people people have, social media, they follow certain people, and I think they want to be seen to be doing something good. And I think what electric cars have done is that they've started a very public conversation that perhaps as an industry we haven't really had for a really long time. Before it was like, are you Holden or Ford? Now it's like, are you electric or are you ICE? Yeah. And then there's this grey area in between where, hybrid, ICE, there's hybrid and things like that, whereas, everyone wants a Toyota hybrid or they want a Tesla. And I think what people hear certain things about what they're contributing to or what they're doing with their vehicle purchase, and so they immediately think they have to have the thing that everyone's talking about.
Sure.
And I think people are more susceptible to that now without thinking, what am I actually doing? Because like I said earlier, it's such a lifestyle change. Yeah. And I am firmly in the camp that we need different solutions for different people. You either run the risk of leaving a huge amount of people behind, or you leave people stranded. And you think about a country like ours, where we're very unique in that, we have a very big regional community that's very spread out. We have a huge landmass that, from one side of Australia to the other, you've almost covered continental Europe and into Asia, Yeah. So there's a lot of challenges there for electric vehicles at the moment where it's just not viable for a lot of people. And that's something that we have to communicate in a lot of ways, because yes, if you live in the suburbs or you live in the city, you might be able to get away with having an electric car, and you rarely venture out, and you might have a second car that's a cheap little petrol powered hatchback that or something like that gets you further. But a lot of people just think, oh yeah, I can just plug it in with my 3-pin socket in the wall and it'll charge overnight. Whereas like, no, the batteries are too big for that.
Yeah.
So there's so many different variables, and then you have the things in between, like, conventional hybrids, plug-in hybrids, hydrogen technology, and a lot of people have have questions because they see things, or they follow someone on Instagram, or they hear all this stuff and they think that it's accessible to you tomorrow. But there's so many things that people need to consider, and that's probably the biggest challenge, is that there are so many people that will get on the trend of buying something. They spend $60,000-$70,000 on a Tesla. They get fucked over by not being able to charge it or being able to.
There's no resale, brother. We were talking about this before. That's the key. Like, I don't know how this is. Like, okay, like these people are leasing these cars. They have a 40 or 50% residual, 30% residual. Mate, some of these people are going to be in so much hurt when that lease period comes up. Yeah. Especially like now, we're in 2024. Like 19, 20, and these new Teslas are coming out. They're all taking their leasing. What are these payouts what are they going to be like? I mean, this is interesting times to see now. You've had a bit of a life cycle where people, what's the average life cycle in Australia? Is it 4 to 5 years, or is it less?
I think the average age of a vehicle on the road is closer to 10.
No, sorry, I meant to say my fault.
Like product life cycle.
Yeah, like for example, the average person, they buy their car, they hang on, like there's an average cycle like 3 or 4 years.
3 to
turn
5
them over.
years, I think it is. Yeah.
So you think about that. I mean, like there's a lot of cars that are going to be coming up.
Yeah.
Where are they going? Tesla's not buying them. They don't want to be buying second-hand cars.
I've been saying this from the start,
Mate,
man.
we witnessed this at the start at Dutton's when we first started getting those Teslas in, because Gabby loved to drive the bloody things, and we'd always end up retailing because no one wanted to buy them. I mean, I'm only saying Tesla because that was the only electric car out there
back then.
I mean, you've got BYD and you've got
Build Your Dreams. What a weird name for a manufacturer.
Build your own dreams. Fuck me, that's a nightmare. That's not a fucking good dream. It's like I wake up in my worst nightmare and I'll fucking design that. Probably get sued now by BYD, but fuck them. I'm entitled to say what I can say because they're ugly as shit. But in saying that, Tesla's got it because it's that trendy Elon Musk. It's all that. He's got the best PR machine. And that's why I think it's probably these Chinese cars or the BYD, they've probably got better technology. I don't understand. Like, I have no idea. I can't even believe we're still talking about EV cars. But in saying that, because I'm still trying to work it out. Like, it's now they're saying the big range is like, some of them are saying 600 or 700 Ks, I think, or something. They're trying to say that's big, man.
You're finding that normally the range predictions
has to be
from
filtered,
the manufacturers are a bit off.
Yeah, so there's the WLTP procedure, which is like the standard measurement or the standard testing process to get your range. Some manufacturers are better at getting close to their claims than others. And, normally there's so many variables as well, because EVs perform poorly in cold weather, for example.
We were talking about this.
Yeah.
All the Teslas are all frozen. Yeah. I couldn't open the doors. I couldn't do anything. I thought that was gold. Okay, what do you do about that? How does that work?
Yeah.
How would that be under warranty? How would that work? Seriously.
What I was referring to was more just the battery needs to be the battery needs to regulate its temperature.
Yes.
So it's easier for it to cool itself rather than to heat itself up.
Sure.
And so, you lose quite a lot of range if you live in a very cold climate. Here it's probably less of a problem, but in Europe it's a very big thing. There are certain brands, like the Korean brands are normally pretty good at getting close to their range claims, and Tesla admittedly is also very good at doing it.
Okay.
There are some other ones where you're never going to get close.
Maybe if you drop it out of a plane. We might get it down that hill very steep. No one in the car. Auto drive. You'll get it. But
yeah, it's definitely an interesting thing because a lot of people, it's also taught a lot of people to look at just the range and not the actual efficiency. So now you're seeing, all these brands bringing out these huge electric SUVs, and they're like, it's got this massive battery with this much range. But same way that we would measure fuel consumption in litres per 100, right? If you have a car that does 15 to 20 litres per 100 Ks, that's really thirsty.
Yes.
Right? And I think you didn't actually consider what the driving range of that car was, whereas it's now the other way around.
Now you just want to know how big the fuel tank is.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
And so people aren't taking into, it's got this much range, but it's using, this might be a random measurement to throw to you guys because you don't know with electric cars, but it's kilowatt hours per 100 Ks instead of litres, right?
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, so for us, anything over 18 to 20 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometres is a very thirsty or, energy intensive vehicle. And a lot of these big SUVs that are electric now, they're using 20 to 30, which is
quite a lot of mass you got to move.
Yeah.
But then what happens, like if you're, now, okay, you're basing those figures, like you said, that benchmark, whatever, to get a minute. But do they factor in air conditioning's on, the heated seats are on, or you're using power? I mean, that, again, speaking firsthand, because Gabby lived in Canterbury and we're in Richmond, so not massively far, like, I don't know, maybe 10 Ks, 15 Ks, whatever, not even. But he'd come in the morning and then Manny or Yardi we'd check it, we'd go and plug it in, and it wouldn't charge. So we'd take it to Tesla for their bigger chargers. But when you got everything on, mate, the power just goes like that. So that's what I'm thinking, like, how do they gauge that? Do they have certain parameters that you can't use that, can't use this because that's going to be drawing power, so they're not really going to get a proper reading? Does that make sense what I'm saying?
So the current testing procedures are meant to better replicate real world conditions, whether it's having the climate control on or you know having hills and things like that, because that's just stuff that we have to deal with, right? And then also the cars have developed to be more efficient at doing those kinds of things. So like a recent trend has been having heat pumps for the battery, so the battery can heat itself, or actually it can heat the cabin rather than using all the battery power to constantly power the thing, which would kill the range. So there's all sorts of things like that where they're just constantly innovating. And, you know, that's something that also has been an interesting part of my job in the last few years, is seeing how quickly manufacturers are changing things. Because before you had a standard product life cycle of 5-7 years, which is still pretty much the case for a lot of internal combustion stuff. A lot of these electric things, they're changing the tech all the time. And, you know, the design, they have much more freedom with the design. They have, you know, the packaging that everyone talks about, dedicated electric platforms, which means, you know, you have that skateboard chassis, which means you open up more space, or you have the frunk, or all those sorts of things. And there's so many interesting developments in that way. Whether you like it or not, it's another thing. But yeah, it's definitely changed how our industry works. And, you know, the range thing is a big one. Range anxiety is still a very big thing, especially in places like Australia where we cover long distances regularly. A lot of people who are, you know, I call them, or some of us call them EV evangelists, but EV evangelists. And, you know, they'll just be like, oh, you know, you can use this charger and you can charge at home at this and blah, blah, blah. But like the normal person, a lot of regular people don't really know or care to do that. They want it to work like their normal car. So there's so many different things. And it's been a real interesting part of my job in the last few years in particular to see this massive change and this massive shift. And like you said earlier, there's been a little bit of like a brake pump in the last year or so where things are starting to slow down on that front, and we're sort of seeing a more mixture of things being cooked into strategies, and, you know, more of a focus on affordable stuff again that people can actually buy because that's where the volume is. So there's just so many parts to it. And there's no real one answer for anyone. That's my take on it anyway.
Yeah, well, Paul,
it's a great take because you guys see it firsthand from that side of it, and especially that's what I'm saying, the consumer behaviours. That it's quite interesting. Like I said, we're pretty blinkered here because, like I said, anything in the new car world we don't really focus on too much. I mean, we're not massive players with the new car. I mean, in a little bit, but even the new cars, we were talking about it, you know, I mean, some of the new stuff, the new McLarens and that, they're just so clinical. Like, they're just too good. Yeah. And that pureness and that rawness is gone. And I don't know, maybe that's the dinosaur in us in this sector of the market. I don't know. But the clients still love this. You know what I mean? Yeah, because they got that. But it's like seems to be still two camps in a way. Yeah, I'm finding, and I'm certainly I know which camp I'm in, and the majority of clients that we deal with are in that camp. But like I said, you know, a couple have got their electric car, and they use it purely for a need and purpose, and they leave it in the city. Yeah, when they're staying in town. Yep, they run around. That's it. But otherwise, they got their Ferraris and their Porsches and their Lambos for everything else. So I get it. I listen to it, and I can see it, but I just don't know if Australia, whether or not we're still too pushing for our Holden Ford mentality style, and that's going to keep that, you know what I mean? It's not going to be as big push like it was. I think it's sort of died off. I mean, again, I don't know. That's what I'm seeing.
We'll be able to watch it play out over the next 3 years.
Fuck, a long time, isn't it?
I know it is, but it takes that long. Market cycles, yeah.
So how are you finding with the manufacturers, are they really bringing out a lot of new product in the Australian market for the Australian consumer, or no, it's just pretty much you'll get what everyone else is getting, sort of the same thing now, like most of them are doing, is just one car sold all around the world.
Yeah, there's a lot of global stuff, but you have some brands like Kia that do a lot of localization of their product in terms of like the ride and handling, for example. There's a couple of brands that do a lot of that. But a lot of the manufacturers here are still just playing catch up because people have really started to understand how global a lot of these brands are. Yeah. So they understand what's available in Europe or the UK or America, and that's what they want. Yep. And the people are just getting frustrated waiting because they can't, because there's been such a rush to ramp up the production of some of these newer cars. But it's not even just limited to electric and hybrid stuff. It's even just the new, most efficient versions of combustion engines. Because we don't have efficiency standards like Europe has had for over 15 years. We haven't had we don't even have really great quality fuel. There's so many factors to it where, brands are not willing to take the risk to import something that might be more expensive out of the factory, but there's benefits to it that people might experience at the Bowser, for example.
Sure.
Or you have these things where people are prone to underfueling their cars in terms of the octane rating. This is something that Volkswagen in particular has.
The Volkswagen thing.
Yeah, they're very vocal about it, and there's a lot of truth to it in that the filtration systems and all that sort of stuff in the exhaust that make it cleaner and more efficient, quite susceptible to being damaged when you fuel it with poor quality fuel. Our levels of sulfur in 91 octane fuel, for example, are much, much higher than that in Europe. So I think the European standard is like 10 parts per million of sulfur in your per litre of fuel or something like that. Whereas our 91 octane unleaded is up to 100 parts per million. So that's quite 10 times. Yeah. And so people, you get your average buyer that perhaps doesn't understand, right? They buy the new Volkswagen, new European car that has one of these exhaust systems with a petrol particulate filter. They underfuel it one time or two times or something like that. That's $2,000 to $5,000 worth of damage because they have to redo that whole thing. And then they go like, I'll never buy this brand again because whatever. And it's partly down to education of the consumer because people need to understand what this extra investment or what this thing's going to do for you. It's like AdBlue as well for diesel cars. People still don't really understand how that works. And so they just see it as an inconvenience rather than something that's actually...
But then there was a stage that there was no AdBlue around at one stage. Is that correct?
And there was a shortage at one point. Yeah.
And we're like... It exposed the vulnerability of that oddball scenario. Because I actually remembered I was looking at a Blue Tech, or whatever Blue thing it was, and one day looking at it, I was going to go... upgrade the thing and get one of those for SUV, and I'm like, nah, that's too much of a headache. Because I thought about, can't get it, it's going to be hard, you can't drive the car, could cause damage. And they're the things you're going, wow. Now, is that still around, the blue thing?
Yeah, the AdBlue stuff is it's more you can buy it in bottles from like Supercheap Auto.
Oh, you can, and it's still currently they're still running it in cars.
Yeah, so the Euro 6 standard for diesels, which not a lot of cars here are still Euro 5. But the Euro 6 diesels added AdBlue. So a lot of the European stuff and a lot of the newer diesel engines, that's how they are almost as clean as a petrol engine. Because you guys remember Dieselgate? That was a huge thing.
Huge.
So AdBlue was part of that new round of regulations, and so that's an additive into the exhaust to kill off a lot of the really harmful pollutants that are a byproduct of burning diesel. So there's still a lot of new cars that have that tech in it, and it's really just like filling up an extra tank with the thing. So I think most of the time it's meant to last for the the maintenance period, whatever it's 12 months or 15,000 Ks. But there are various scenarios where if you're using it a certain way, towing and things like that, you might churn through it a little bit more. So it's just understanding. People need to understand what goes into that because same way with like electric cars and things like that, you just need to understand that there's another element to it, but that also comes with the benefit of reducing your environmental impact if that matters to you and all that kind of thing. So it's just it's a really interesting time where we've seen emission standards be announced and we're seeing fuel standards be implemented in the next couple of years. We're finally catching up with the rest of the world. It could mean a lot of things for the industry now. It could mean that we see a high ratio of this electric cars coming in and people might be more willing to take a punt on it, or we start getting the European or standard combustion stuff that's really efficient, that's almost hybrid efficient, and people are willing to just stay with what they know for a little bit longer because I think a lot of us in my line of work, we've theorized how it's going to pan out because Europe's doing the 2030 thing, UK I think is at 2035 or Europe pushed back, and then UK's 2030 back. Europe went back to 2035 or something because a lot of the brand and industry there was like
put a lot of pressure on them
because it would kill off their businesses and so I think in Australia we're still, even right now, like Euro 6 came into effect in Europe in like 2013, 2014. So we're still at least 10 years behind various parts of the world. I think there's still a long time before we start seeing a huge, majority electric fleet. Like, we still have diesel Euro 5 utes at the top of our sales charts. And they're selling some 60, 70,000 units per year. Yeah. And that's just in the last couple of years alone. There's still a lot of change to happen before we get there. So I think I'm an advocate for choice, and I'm an advocate for diversity, because I think that, if we're offered the most efficient and cleanest versions of every different fuel and powertrain type, I think it allows everybody to make the most educated and most,
choices,
environmentally conscious choices for themselves. And you don't run the risk of leaving people behind or alienating people who are not necessarily serviced by the products that are on sale. So there is an element of having to sort of take some choices away, but I think most of the stuff that we have access to now has a much more developed version available somewhere else in the world.
Sure. Right.
And I think that people need to be cognizant of that, in that it's not just let's just do a big hop, skip and a jump to whatever certain people are telling us, just because there might be incentives for them to be doing that. And I'm not trying to pan electric cars, but I believe they have a place.
Yes.
But I think, people just need to understand that, you should be a bit more conscious of, if you really care about what your impact is, maybe think about what you're doing now and what you need, rather than, we have a culture of buying in excess. It's almost a little bit of an American thing. You guys would see people that come in here and do things like that. Do you really need that Lambo? Do you really need that jet? That kind of thing.
100%.
And I think now people are less loyal to brands and things like that. They want to have something that's cool that they can talk about. And it's just a really interesting time. So I hope, my personal wish is that, with all these things that are finally happening from a regulatory perspective, it actually empowers people to be more educated and make better choices for themselves. And then, as the experts, we can help them make the best decision for them. So,
with the EV, are you finding that the manufacturers are pushing more the EV than the hybrid technology, or they're trying to feed in both, trying to cover both areas of the market?
Really, it depends on the manufacturer. You get, Toyota's one that we cover quite a bit, and it causes quite a bit of controversy in our comment sections, because Toyota's sort of a little bit anti-establishment like that. It's very firm on its hybrid stuff, which is honed for a very long time.
Sure.
Toyota's sort of been caught off guard by the sudden rush of EVs. They still do. It's still the biggest manufacturer in the world, but they're getting increasing pressure from, shareholders, customers to suddenly come out with electric stuff. So you've got some of their company representatives making very bold claims about, they think, electric's never going to happen the way that some
hydrogen, massive.
Yeah, and in Japan and in Korea, hydrogen's a really big thing. So it's so regionalized as well, and that's the thing. It's very easy for us to say, it should look like this, but you look at the landscape of Tokyo, you look at the landscape 100%. Of London, Paris, Los Angeles, New York. There are so many different use cases, so many different variables that you have to take into account. Where it's not just a one size fits all approach. So you get some brands, particularly the European ones, that now they're sort of skipping over the hybrid stuff because people haven't really taken to plug-in hybrids, for example, and there hasn't really been any sort of financial incentive from the government to adopt them the same way that there has been in Europe. So a lot of manufacturers are starting to skip over those and go straight to the electric stuff, and that's mainly a European thing. Whereas a lot of the other brands that perhaps have to focus more on the attainable price brackets, they can't just afford to skip to cars that are $20,000, $30,000 more, or double the price of their combustion engine equivalent. They have to have this sort of, gradual range through. So you look at, Hyundai's a really good example, where they've got everything from really cheap petrol-powered stuff right through, and then they're starting to introduce hybrids. They've got some electric stuff and all that kind of thing. They've got everything in between, and there's a number of the volume manufacturers that have to take that into account. But it really just depends on what their approach is, and sometimes it's a global level, not even in just a localized thing, or the other way around.
But I suppose our market is, look, certainly our appetite's very big for cars, but again, I can only think of my time with heavy brands and allocations for Australia, and you have to build a car a certain way. We don't want it, it's not worth us doing it. We couldn't give a shit, really. Okay, so we got to add this, add that to try and add the care factor enough to build it. And it was amazing that way. Whereas, is it still you're finding where just the slowdown because, we're such a small market, so they really don't care, or they are trying to sort of what the cars that are coming out and they're trying to get things for our market. I mean, they're finding it, they recognise it as a strong market, or they really still don't really give a shit much.
Again, it's very brand dependent.
Yeah.
You get some manufacturers where Australia is their top market.
Yeah.
Like I think Mazda, Mitsubishi, Australia's a really big
Strong market for them.
Yeah, and then you have Toyota for certain products.
Yes.
It's a very important market. Like Land Cruiser Australia is a huge market for Land Cruiser.
How'd you find that with the changeover? Because I know a lot of clients go, I'm not getting out of my 200 series, I'm going to keep that V8, and then a few clients have gone over now to the 300 series, and a few people said, mate, it's actually really good.
Oh, it's a great car. I drove one from Melbourne to Adelaide and back.
Oh, really?
I
Yeah.
freaking loved it.
Yeah.
I think, it's sort of that same thing that where you talk about like petrol to electric. It's the same people that were going, I'm not going from a V8 to a V6.
Yeah.
But, there was a period where people were a bit funny about it, but the waiting lists out the door around the block.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the same thing for the 4-cylinder 70 series now that's just come out with the automatic.
Yes.
That's caused huge waves in terms of what people perceive it as and things like that. We've done some testing. The auto and the 4-cylinder, it's a Hilux engine that's been heavily reworked.
Yes.
But in a lot of ways, it's better than the old V8 because it's more efficient, it's quicker, having a 6-speed instead of a 5-speed,
Sure.
all that kind of thing. It's easier to drive. For a lot of people, that's not enough. They'll just be like, oh, that's for pussies or whatever.
No,
that kind of buyer.
Yeah,
so
of
not
course,
to be offensive, but that's just that's how some people see it.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? But, in a lot of ways, it's the more efficient, easier to live with thing, which for a lot of people, it's probably going to be the better option for them. And it won't be, outmoded as quickly because that V8 is on borrowed time, really, because that kind of engine doesn't have many more years left in it.
What's this in general? You mean the Toyota V8 or
just
in general?
The V8 diesel that's in the 70 series.
Sorry, yeah.
I don't think that engine will be around for much longer.
But it was such a tried and tested and just proven, so people swear by them, you know what I mean? And they were worried about, what's this new thing going to be like? How am I going to tow? How am I going to this? How am I going to this? Obviously, education, and I guess people are slowly coming across. Like I said, actually slowly, the big long lines of orders. But you have to admit, though, how much durability are you going to get out of a smaller capacity engine? Yes, the technology is great. Yes, the fuel efficiency is there, but it's got there through other reasons, you know what I mean? And you've gone smaller capacity. It's like the A45. Like I remember when the first A45 came out, and I was driving 63 at the time, and I'm going, they fudged the figures, Benz, because the A45 was quicker than the 63 off the line.
Right.
So they fudged the figures because otherwise people are going, fucking V8 and you guys and your fucking rice burner.
Uh-huh.
But in saying that, I remember driving it the first time going, this shouldn't go so hard, but what's this going to be like as a time bomb down the track?
What's your opinion in
trade
general?
Very rarely will, we get called on anything in an A45, CL A45 or that style of car, 60, 70 Ks. I do not want to know about it because most of them sadly have been raped and pillaged and thrashed. They've not been looked after, and the fact is they are gearbox issues, that sort of stuff. So you sit there and you go, they're grouse, but you're getting a lot of power out of a smaller capacity engine. How much durability, how much longevity are you going to get out of it?
Yeah.
And that's again, mate, plenty of clients have got the dual cab utes. We looked at I remember driving the 2-litre Raptor going, oh man, 2-litre, man, it needs to be a V6. You think towing, the weight, it's going to be under so much duress, working 10-speed, shifting, changing gears, trying to find the right equivalent gear. And you just think to yourself, surely that is not going to be good in the long run in terms of, your strong, lumpy V8 that's just got so much durability. That's for 500,000-600,000 Ks and still going strong. And again, maybe this is the dinosaur in me talking, but I don't know. I just look at it from a common sense point of view. You know what I mean? I don't know. How do you see that the way they're going? Smaller capacities, more power, more this, more that. Come on, man. Still got a lot of weight, still got a lot of duress. I noticed in our car, and the thing, how fucking different it is when you start towing shit, man.
In the GWM.
Mate, the fuel, everything, it's just straight away you notice it. But you put on the V6 Ranger, no issue. And you sit there, that's what I look at these things, you know what I mean? Okay, granted, I've been surrounded by big V8, big engines that just did it easily, and you just sit there and you go, wow, I don't know. That's what I don't know what they'll be like. And you know what I mean? How are they going to be in the long run?
Yeah,
That's
it
the
really,
thing.
a lot of it just takes time. We don't even know because some of the tech's quite new that we just can't tell you what it's going to be
It
like.
must scare you, some of the tech that's coming out in some of these cars. Like, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, but I guess it's just, unfortunately,
Just the demand of the consumer.
and also just the regulatory stuff. To sell some of these cars in certain markets, you need to have certain emissions and fuel consumption thresholds met. And the only way to do that is to downsize, to turbocharge, to mild hybridize, or to plug in and all that kind of thing. And, I think as we've seen throughout decades in this industry, that as soon as you start adding complexity and all those kind of things, there's more things to go wrong. Yeah. But, I guess you look at some of this heavy duty stuff that you're talking about, it's an interesting debate because, people come to me asking, I want an Everest, for example. Should I get the bi-turbo or should I get the previous one with the 5-cylinder and the bi-turbo? Now we just tell everyone to get the V6 because that's a great engine. It's still very efficient,
That's a great car, that Everest, isn't it? They've done an amazing job Ford with that.
Yeah.
It is.
It's the Ranger and the Everest.
Yeah, they are amazing.
They've sort of shown that commercial stuff or commercially based stuff doesn't have to be shit anymore. Yeah. Because I'll go on record time and time again, I hate utes. Yeah. I've always hated them. I've never understood why people love them so much. I know they have a lot of capability, so you need to tow, you need to go off-road. They're fairly attainable ways to get in there before you get into like your Land Cruisers and Land Rovers and all that kind of thing. Yep. But, I'm in my late 20s now, but even early to mid 20s, everyone wanted a ute because they wanted to go camping and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, yeah, that's great when you do that once every now and then. But, most of my days spent in the city or whatever, I don't want to be driving this stuff.
Yeah, I know.
It's so cumbersome to drive.
I drove a Ranger Raptor through the CBD and I felt like I was in a bus, like a double-decker London bus. I know.
How did you make the comparison between the Amarok and the Ranger? How did you guys see it?
They've been the same fundamentals.
DNA platform,
same platform. It's a Ford chassis. The engines are from Ford, and then there was some point, and this is Volkswagen likes to talk about this a lot. There was one point in the process where the German team went this way and the Ford team went that way. So there's still a lot of differences between them. And then in terms of the tech and the design and how they drive, the Amarok.
Do they drive very differently?
Yes and no.
Okay.
There are certain elements, so the Ranger is very probably a little bit more of the heavy duty one.
Yes.
If you're a bit more rough and tumble, or you're traveling the country a lot more. I think that what the new Amarok does, it sort of serves as a replacement for people who used to buy that X Class from Mercedes. That sort of more premium. Right. Yeah, it's more of that.
That didn't really go well, did it? The X Class, did it?
It didn't even last more than one generation globally. They killed it really quickly.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Anyone I know that went, oh, this is a fucking joke. They should just bought a Navara. But they bought it because of the Benz badge. You know what I mean? And I actually have not heard anyone really say much.
And you rarely see them anymore.
Yeah.
But in terms of the Amarok and the Ranger, like if you're probably more road biased or you want something that's a little bit more, premium feeling, or like an SUV.
Had a bit more finesse and a bit more style and class about the Amarok. Perceived that, whereas the Ranger was a bit of a knockabout. With a bit of a nice suit, whereas that one's, that's how I perceived it. Because we were looking at it. I had a new Ranger coming in December, and then I just sort of put it on hold. I was like struggling which way to go and whatever, and we got this GW which we're using now anyways. But I looked at the Amarok because it just had a bit of a nicer look with the rims, the top of the range one or the whatever it is.
The Panamericana one with the big 22s on it.
And then the one underneath that, which they did it in the launch colour, the blue, which looked really smart, or maybe that's the Panamericana. But it's just amazing how they were similar, but yet so different in their way, in the styling, and it was just interesting. And because that's done very well too, the Amarok, isn't it?
The V6s especially are doing very well, and I think people now there's a 6-cylinder option in the what globally is known as the compact ute segment, because for America the F-150 is a very normal size. The V6s have changed how people use them because they're so powerful, they're so good at towing and doing like it's just the first thing that we recommend.
Like just easy.
And it's just the better engine. And they're the only two really in the segment that offer that at the moment. A lot of the other brands, they haven't been able to really do that yet. So it'll be interesting to see whether the other Asian brands catch up and do that, or whether there's a new players that come in. We're potentially seeing some of the American electric brands like Rivian and stuff come in with their utes, but they're fully battery electric.
But that hasn't worked with Ford. I mean, they're dead with those Lightning utes. I mean, the F-150 Lightning utes. I mean, it got to a stage, I think they were like 7,000 or 8,000 US because they can't give them away just to get them out of the showroom.
That's interesting because for a while though you couldn't buy one because people wanted them so much.
And then supposedly it's done a total flip. I was watching some stuff over in America where they were heavily discounting. Where Ford are realising, I don't know about this EV, mate. I don't know about this. It's talking about the market sector there, and they're just pulling out and how they're struggling to get these EVs, and they're not practical, and people are driving around with generators in the back, and it's like a bit of a what comes first, the chicken or the egg sort of scenario. You know what I mean? And you're like, shit. And I heard that, and I was like, because they were talking about possibly bringing that out here, the Lightning or this sort of style. And I'm thinking, I wonder if Australia would really adapt that in a ute.
I don't think
we're such a ute culture bloke.
The dual cab market isn't an electric buyer market. I wouldn't have said.
I think the technology is not there to meet the capabilities that Aussies expect of it as well. Like, in America, you have a lot of people that would drive a big truck like that and just use it like a normal car. Whereas here, people want to say, I can tow 3.5 tons, 1,000 kilometers interstate to a remote thing with no power. Oh, wait, I have an electric thing. I need power. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I can't do it.
The Range is going to introduce a plug-in hybrid late this year or early next.
They are.
Yeah, so it was primarily designed for Europe, but it'll be a really interesting case study to see what happens there because I think because it's got the dual powertrain thing, it'll still be able to do all the things that a normal Ranger should be able to do. But for your normal stuff where you just go into the shops or whatever, you can drive it as an EV, which is...
So will it be a smaller engine capacity though?
So it has the 2.3 litre turbo that is offered here in the Amarok. So that's and it's offered in other markets in the Ranger as well. We don't get it here yet. But yeah, so it'll be that engine with a lithium battery and an electric motor. So that'll be a really interesting case study, I think, to see how that kind of electrified drivetrain works in a dual cab that's actually still a workhorse of sorts. But again, that'll still be something that will be specialized in the sense that, I don't think Ford dealers will be recommending that car to people that perhaps won't get the best use out of it. I think it's still like, you need to be somebody that perhaps drives it in town a lot or that kind of thing. So you can make the most out of it. Otherwise, you're just lugging around a big battery for no reason. Yeah. So.
Curious. So away from dual cab utes.
Yes. I feel like we've been talking about that for a while.
Yes. Sean's just wants to know what to buy next.
I'm a Maloo.
So as an automotive journalist, how often would you say you're getting to drive sort of the stuff that we'd be interested in, sports cars, spicy stuff, versus your regular everyday
consumer transport?
Yeah, we cover everything. The problem is we've got a lot of people on the team that all want to do a little bit of that. So we still drive Lambos. I've reviewed the Aston Martin DBX. I've reviewed the Bentley Bentayga. We do get invited.
What do you think of that?
I like it. I think it's a really interesting thing. Like Aston Martin is probably my favorite brand. The original Vanquish is my favorite car of all time.
Yeah, it's a beautiful car.
When they started doing the SUV thing, I was like, oh, okay, it's just another one of those, jump on the bandwagon things. After driving it, I really enjoyed it. I don't know if I would buy one for myself. I think my thing would be like, I just get the DBS or the DB11 or something. That would be
literally.
We were just saying this in our previous podcast because we just got it in, and I go, I bought it because they're popular.
Yeah,
I didn't buy it because I like it because I wouldn't. Otherwise, I'd be driving it. But it's like, okay, the world's fastest SUV. That shouldn't go in the same sentence. I look at that. Like I go, what do you want to be?
Yeah.
Do you want to be a DB11 Superleggera or do you want to be an SUV? Because at the moment you sound like you need a shrink because you don't know what you want to be.
I think it's also very big, so it might need to shrink.
Brother, it's a huge car, man. Yeah. You know what I mean? And then you look at the Passang, or what do you call it? The Ferrari thing.
Yeah,
whatever it is.
I won't bring out my Italian accent. I don't want to sound like a shit. Yes.
But it's like, these are big cars, mate. And they're all talking about how much punch, how quick.
Who cares?
I didn't buy an SUV for that.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. They're starting to lose their sense of what they are. I mean, have you guys reviewed the Persang yet, the Ferrari?
Yeah, Albors went and did the international drive.
Oh, you did the big one. Okay,
and he loved it. He thought it was great. I think, it's with these big uber luxury SUVs, if you will, I think, some of, not to be sexist, but the companies will sort of explain that, you'd have someone that would come in, the guy would buy his supercar and he wanted something for his wife that she wasn't intimidated to drive.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of these cars were conceptually. And, I think now is that there's just this love for crossovers and SUVs that people go like, I love Aston Martins or I love Lambos or I love Bentleys. I want the SUV one because immediately in your head that's practical. Even though, you know, you have a 2+2 seater that can fit your kids in the back, or you got a limousine version of something that can do that too. But it's just not the fashionable choice.
Yes.
No.
You know, oh, you're an old man because you have a sedan or a wagon kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right? But yeah, I enjoyed. I didn't drive the 707. I drove the standard one, which was still pretty fast.
Yeah.
The problem with these cars as well is that there's too much mix of other brand stuff in there.
Well, I don't know if I'm in a Benz or I'm in a...
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
I mean, it's great that they've got that powertrain because the powertrain's great.
Yeah.
And you can pretty much bank on a lot of the older Astons that we've had, the V12, that 6-litre, she's just, you know, they have issues with them. But you thought, okay, that's fantastic because you got the right switchgear, all the right technology. But if I close my eyes and open up, am I GLS? Is it GLC?
Yeah.
And that's the same thing that I had with the Bentayga as well. I did the launch of the facelifted Bentayga maybe 3 years ago or something like that. I was so excited because it was the first time I'd done one of like the proper premium stuff.
Yeah, awesome.
And I sat in it and I was like, you know, everything's covered in leather. It's beautifully made. But then even just the steering wheel, the buttons, the center console and everything, it's all straight out of the Audi. And it's luckily Audi is a really good base to start with.
No,
so it's still really nice. But when I remember writing the review and I was like, okay, if I could get a very high spec Q8, which really underneath is the same car.
Basically.
The interior is almost the same. A lot of the parts and the buttons are the same. I could go through the Audi individual program and do a lot of this diamond quilted stitching and, you know, high grade leathers and stuff. Do I really need to spend $500,000, $600,000? But I'm probably not the person because I'm so pragmatic. I don't think I'm the person that's going into these showrooms, right?
I was going to say, we're not that market. Yeah. It's not. And I'm looking at the new buyers that are there and they're not the old buyers. It's a whole new... Yeah. It's amazing. When I can see the launches or I'll get invited to go to some of the stuff and I don't go because I don't really believe in the product, a lot of the new stuff. So I don't go. I'm not going to go there. I don't go there. A lot of people go, you don't go there. I don't believe in it, man. I get it, but I don't believe in it.
And you're right, the demographic has definitely changed. Like I went to a Rolls-Royce owner event recently. I went with a friend of mine who works in the industry. She was hosting the event and I was expecting to rock up to this event and see all these old people, right? And like you say, it's a completely new buyer. They're people my age or a little bit older and they're dropping $1 million on these cars. Crazy. And just the way that the way that they spec them's different. You know, everything is black on black, or you know, everyone's the Kim Kardashian grey or whatever. Because they want it sleek, but also it's the quickest way to get into it too, because it's likely to have one in stock. There's none of this bespoke stuff anymore until you get people that are willing to really drop the coin on it. So it's a really interesting time, and I think that's probably where our worlds intertwine quite a bit, because there's still that attitude where people aren't brand loyal anymore. They go like, I want something that's a designer. You know, there are some, you know, you think about a time when if your wife wants a designer handbag or something like that, or you want something that's a designer piece, and you're like, I have an idea of what I like. There's this one design house or brand or whatever, that's what I like and that's what I'm always going to shop. Whereas I feel like now people don't think that way. They just go like, I want something and these are the boxes that I need to tick. But in terms of who makes it or where it comes from, I really don't give.
No, exactly. There's no loyalty there. It's just like, that'll work for me. And in a way it's sad because all these manufacturers want that loyalty, that constant generation. You keep coming back and keep coming back, and everyone's just offering so much today.
Yeah, there's so amazing, much option.
There is so much options.
And nowadays, all the cars are getting very close to being all on the same platform, all sharing engines.
Brother, there's so much DNA being shared amongst all the various global manufacturers. It is quite amazing. Like I said, just to say to someone, well, that's just a fucking so-and-so with a different dress. That's all it is. Supercars was a similar scenario, you know what I mean? How much Rimac DNA is in all these other vehicles with the battery charging and all that sort of stuff. And I mean, the Pininfarina Battista is really, it's a bloody Rimac and a different dress. And then you've got so much technology sharing. And then, I mean, I don't know. I mean, who's got the true identity anymore? That's the thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Who are you finding from your side of things in the uber luxury segment that's just getting stronger and stronger? Or are you finding that you've got new players coming to the market taking share, or you're finding there's certain brands that are still just, they're the thresholds or the benchmark?
It's an interesting question. I think, when I think of which brands are staying most true to their identity. I
Yeah.
think you have. I think Rolls-Royce is a really great example of that. Like they're
With that new Spectre that's come out with the bloody full electric.
yeah, that's the event. That was the car that I saw at the event. And
How was it?
It's beautiful. I haven't driven it, but it's
I've got a couple of clients who've actually got them on order, and they're like,
Yeah.
"Don't get upset, Shorty." You know, they're like, "Fuck, I've got my clients. Don't get upset." What'd you do? I got a new Spectre. Yeah, all right. That's pretty gangster. I mean, not that I'm a fan of it, but that's just like
Yeah.
this floating.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I
But
think
that's
like-
what Rolls Royces have been for so long anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they've stayed
that was
true.
good?
Yeah, it looks beautiful. Like it's a Rolls. It just
Yeah.
happens to have a battery and electric motors
Yeah,
underneath.
yeah.
And I think that's probably where these uber luxury brands have an opportunity to do it differently because
Yes.
they have a base of very loyal rusted on customers.
Yeah.
There's an element of the new money and the new people that come through as well. But I think, there are a lot of people like us who look at a brand and go like, why would I buy this? It's because this brand offers me this and that.
Yep.
I think Rolls-Royce has done a really good job of that.
Yes.
The other ones, I think it really just depends on what product it is.
Yeah.
I think I'm not quite as enamored with Ferraris these days as I used to.
No,
Yeah, I'm the
it's
same.
A lot of their new
Same.
stuff is a little bit generic.
Yeah, I'm the same.
they're cool, but
Yeah,
the design's not quite as out there. It's not
Yeah,
as
no.
hard-edged or anything like
Yeah,
that. I think Lamborghini design is still very much
They've
like...
done a great job of staying true to their...
Yeah, I think in terms of the design and keeping the V10 and the V12 alive, I think that's really cool. Like
Yeah.
instead of, I think the Revolto is still a hybrid,
Yeah.
but it's a V12. I
Yeah.
think the
Yeah.
Huracan replacement will be a V10 hybrid or
Yeah.
something similar. They're very attentive to their target audience and their brand DNA. You have some other ones that I think McLaren is the new McLaren has stayed pretty true to what they've always been since
Yeah.
they relaunched. But again, they're sort of, like you say, they're very clinical. They're perhaps not quite as exciting. Maybe for me that works because I like that kind of stuff, but not everyone likes it.
No, yeah, true. I don't know. A supercar should be a sense of occasion every time, I think.
Yeah.
And it should be both good and bad.
Yeah, exactly right. Flaws,
I mean?
flaws are
It's-
what make them.
Yeah, I was going to say something, but then I as well won't like that, so I won't say that. But in saying that, I mean, that's the thing, and I think, you're speaking to people, you know what I mean? Speaking to people where they just, that's why I think as the electric vehicle market or that style keeps going that way, we're still going to be that little beacon in the industry that has that DNA of that rawness, that the true hardcore, the true enthusiast, which there's still a good amount, will be, I think. I don't know.
Yeah.
Are you happy the way you're seeing things going in the industry?
Yes and no.
Yeah.
I sometimes wonder, when I'm old enough and rich enough to be in a position to buy something like what you've got in the showroom, I might not be able to do it anymore. That it's
is a worry.
Yeah, because I grew up in the 90s when it was like this heyday of everything, and the
Yeah.
early 2000s was the same. And so you
Yeah.
think, when I grow up, I want to do this and that.
Yeah.
And it's very quickly changed. And so it'll be interesting to see whether it stays on the trajectory that it's on now, because like we've discussed, there's so many things that are changing
Yeah.
every day.
Yeah.
There's a lot of push and pull. There's a lot of conflicting opinions and things like that. But I think at the same time, there will be a happy balance somewhere, I think. And if a lot of the brands and manufacturers can sort of stick to that, in that they remember who their audience is and they still make a variety of things where different people can find the things that work for them, great. But yeah, I don't know. Imagine if we all go to zero emissions in 20 years' time, you can't really drive these things anymore. That'd be a
I just
sad
don't
day.
see how they're going to do that.
Yeah, I can't see that
I
happening.
can't see them happening.
But if it did, oh my God, I'd cry.
Oh, forget
I'd
it,
cry.
mate. I'm just going to cop fines every day.
Yeah, straight up.
They just got fines every day. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, that's why it's interesting listening to it from your point of view, because you see it from the back end, the manufacturers, and you've seen the consumer confidence, you've seen the way the market's moving and the way it's going. I look at the industry and the market, and I feel a little bit sad because I think that the product's getting very sterile, and they all seem to be offering the same thing.
Yeah.
And then it's like you don't know what your brand loyalty is anymore. You know what I mean? I was always a very brand person, loyalty. You live by that brand. They always looked after it. But everyone now, they seem to cater for everyone. And they've, like, some of them are losing their target audience because they're trying to, let's just go for that market sector now. You know what I mean? It's like a little bit all over the place. I think that's where Ferrari's like, fuck, they're doing that. We should do that too.
Yeah.
I remember, we will never, ever build an SUV.
Yeah.
Remember that, mate? Remember
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
Remember that? Yeah, now. So it's interesting, yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. Well,
when you get you on 6 months, we'll get you on another 6 months. It'll be interesting to see how you see the market, how evolved. It will be really interesting to see.
Yeah, we've blasted past an hour.
Wow, it was awesome. So. Thank you, mate.
Thank you for having me. It was
great.
It's been awesome. It's been awesome. And a whole bunch of questions we didn't even get to. So,
but that's how this tangent works. We
it always works.
It's just talking. We started talking that, and it's just so. Hopefully, you enjoyed it, and definitely get you back on, mate. It'd be awesome. It was really good.
100%.
Thank you, mate. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for listening, guys.
Thank you all. Sorry for running late. We'll see you when we see you next.
We won't make you wait 2 months again this time, I promise.
Thank you.
Bye.